Had sex with my dead twin brother's girlfriend to help cope with his loss. My twin sewer slide was one of the most impactful parts of my life. Being only 14 at the time, it was confusing, heartbreaking, and completely changed my perspective on life. I had never experienced the death of a loved one, so my first death being my brother was extremely tough for me. My parents became increasingly concerned about me and my mental health, so she always filled our flat with people close to my brother to make me feel supported. One of these people was my brother's girlfriend. She lived nearby and had been dating my brother for about a year, so I saw her a decent amount, but in the months after his death she came over almost every day for supper. Like me, she took his death pretty hard. We would comfort each other by talking about our favorite things to do with him, listen to his favorite songs, and would do anything to make it feel like he's still here with us. One night, while doing this exact routine we had for months, we started talking about their relationship. Being young and innocent, I barely understood the concept of a relationship, so when she told me they were sexually active, I was stunned. I started bombarding her with questions, all of which she answered with little detail. After finding this out though, it was hard for me to live knowing there was a side of my brother I never got to see and only she got to see. Over the next year or so, she became more willing to talk about the details that I was dying to know. The more time went on, the more details I got, and the closer me and her became. It being a few years after his death now, she was an open book with me. We discussed her struggles with dating after bro's death and how it's hard for her to even imagine herself being with someone else after what she had been through. One night in late winter we had come home from an outdoor concert. It was the type of cold where you could feel it in your bones. I ran to my room to grab blankets and proceeded to cover ourselves on the couch. She cuddled up towards me as we watched some TV and attempted to warm ourselves up by my tiny electric fireplace. It felt so natural that I had barely even noticed that what we were doing was probably abnormal. As usual, we start discussing her relationship issues and she mentions how cuddling on me felt like she was with him again. She started crying, which made me start to tear up. I embrace her more as she talks about how much she misses his touch. I would also like to note that throughout all this, I did not have sensual feelings towards her whatsoever other than a fleeting thought here and there. At this point though, things started to get somewhat heated, despite me not realizing it at first. She slides her hands under my sweater to embrace me tighter and simply asks, "Can I?" At this point I realized what she's starting to imply and we started kissing. The more we did it, the more passionate it became. We had sex that night and it was the most natural good feeling thing I've ever experienced. This evolved into a full-on relationship that was cut short by me having to leave for uni. However, it seemed that whatever she got from our short-lived relationship helped her get over my brother, as she was in a relationship shortly after I left. She also seemed to be much happier from the few conversations we've had since. Our relationship also helped me cope with his death in a weird way since she was there for me throughout my entire grieving process. It felt like closing a chapter on a tough time in my life. Not sure how immoral it was, but in the end it was largely beneficial to both of us. My boyfriend told me that I'm uglier than most of the women he's been with. So a couple of nights ago we were drinking and discussing how men often feel the need to put their height in their dating profile and how it's silly that a lot of women will go for someone solely on their height. He then said how in his friend group, even though his friends are more successful than him, he always got more girls because he was taller. Then out of nowhere, he said, "Yeah, you're on the lower end of who I've been with." When my jaw dropped, he then said there have been models. I could tell I was about to burst into tears, so I calmly told him that and went upstairs. I felt like I'd been punched in the heart. I know I'm not model pretty, but still. Ouch. What makes it even more upsetting is he's often told me how I'm the ideal person for him looks-wise, told me I'm gorgeous and hot before. He's also told me he's basically only with me because of how I look. Him attacking my personality is a common thing. I have ADHD and my ADHD traits really piss him off, yet now suddenly he's settling for me because he's been with way better before. He started texting me and telling me I was being irrational, that I was throwing a tantrum. Then I said I'm not on the lower end. I went downstairs and tried calmly talking to him about it, but he just went on about how I was terrible for running away and how he only said that because I'd said something earlier that upset him. That he didn't mean it. He was still saying this all very angrily, so I don't know if he meant it or if he was just telling me what I wanted to hear. He was very defensive. Just trying to talk to him about what he said, even very calmly, made him yell and scream at me and throw a beer bottle on the ground. Said, "I mean, come on, you have frizzy hair and a big butt." Even though my butt is clearly his favorite thing about me, and one time he said it's probably the only reason he's still dating me. The only thing I can think of that I said that maybe made him upset was not too long before he said the lower end comment. He was berating me about my personality and how I'm selfish apparently and all this stuff. He said he was the best guy I could get. Nobody else would put up with me. I said something like, "Trust me, I could get a lot of guys." And I'm pretty sure that's what pissed him off. Either way, I can't stop thinking about that stupid comment. He is a good-looking guy and I often feel like I'm not good enough to be with a good-looking person. He knows I suffer from body dysmorphia. I honestly don't really have any idea what I look like. I just know I'm not conventionally attractive. I know he's attracted to me, but I think he is maybe insecure about wanting to be with a conventionally attractive girl and I don't fit the bill. I don't even know. He's also told me before that I have a frumpy, peach-shaped body and it's so hard to reconcile these comments with the ones he said before about how I'm the ideal girl for him, looks-wise, and how attracted he is to me. My heart hurts and I just want to hide under the blankets and never come out and never have anyone look at me ever again. I don't know how to feel or what to believe anymore. What horrible thing did your significant other do that ended it all? So I have been together with my girlfriend for almost 8 years. Our relationship was kinda rocky since I usually have to go on business trips to different countries once in a while, and she's admitted she hates it since she's paranoid that I might be cheating on her. She's gotten cheated before in the past. I, of course, reassured many times that I wasn't. Even to the point I was not drinking while on my trips, trying my best to avoid other female interaction, even calling, texting her anytime I was immediately free to text. She's also pregnant, which I assume made her paranoia worse. Sometimes I'd even wake up to her calling me crying on the phone cause I didn't answer her texts within a minute. I still once again did everything to clear her suspicions about me, which made me kinda depressed knowing that she doesn't trust me fully enough. Last Tuesday, I came back home early from my trip to surprise her, even buying a big patch of flowers and tickets to a movie she'd been dying to see for a couple months, as well as buying her a ring since I've been wanting to pop the question for a while now. When I arrived back home, I saw a car that I wasn't familiar with parked in the driveway. I assumed it was her friend's car since one of them got her license 9 months ago. As I opened the door to the house, I heard music blasting from our bedroom. I thought this was a bit strange since she doesn't like loud noises. As I came upstairs and entered the bedroom, I saw something I thought I'd never seen in a million years. My girlfriend was riding some guy that I'd never seen before in my life. I'm not gonna go into details about what I did, but the guy ended up leaving the house after 15 or 20 minutes. Afterwards, me and my girlfriend had a shouting match. She was accusing me of all sorts of things, like how I was never around much, I rarely took her on dates anymore, and that I was probably cheating on her while on my business trips. Which is a fucking lie, considering I've always took her out somewhere when I came back from work, even when I was tired as shit. And her accusing me of cheating was a fucking lie because I always showed her that I wasn't. Even gave her all my social media's password because I fucking loved her. I don't know why, but I just snapped. I packed all her belongings and threw them out into the cold, rainy street, where she started screaming at me even more for doing that. My head was hurting from the amount of anger that built up, and her screaming in my ear didn't help. Now I don't condone what I did, and I of course regret it, but I just grabbed her and threw her out into the street, where I screamed at her to not come back because the locks would be changed. I slammed the door and called off work for 2 weeks due to a family emergency. Did I do the wrong thing? I just can't find it in my heart to forgive her at all, even though she is carrying my child. What did a close friend do to you that ruined the relationship forever? I was 17 at that time and had gone to attend one of my classmates' birthday party. It was an afternoon function and the party was sumptuous. Though we had our occasional differences, I was still on good terms with the birthday girl. Her dad is a very influential person in the hospitality industry and is a powerful rich businessman. He liked showing his wealth, and he gifted her an Audi. Later that evening, she insisted that I and 3 of her friends join her for a ride in her new car. I thought it would be rude if I declined her, so I reluctantly agreed. She was on the wheels and was a good driver. It had rained that afternoon, so it was a pleasant evening. We had rolled down our windows on her instructions. Now there was this couple going on their scooter with a young girl. She was around 6 to 7 and they looked like a below average family trying hard to survive on their limited income. The little girl was wearing a white frock and her parents' clothes looked old. She was driving aggressively and we almost collided with their scooter. It barely missed. The uncle confronted us and told us to be careful. He was polite and in no way rude to us. It was our mistake and he was right to point it out. After all, the road doesn't belong to our fathers. I thought it had ended there, but I was mistaken. So now our princess took this as an offense and she followed them. There was a pothole filled with muddy water because of rain. She intentionally drove into that pothole, splashing the couple with muddy water. She hurriedly drove off before any more confrontation. I did manage to look back and could see their clothes were completely ruined. The little girl broke down in tears. I reckon it was her only new dress and we had ruined it. We had wiped out her smile and she was crying. I still remember her face, which made me cry. This was a couple who were barely surviving on minimum income. They would have saved every penny so that they could afford a new dress for their daughter. We not only ruined her dress but also their evening. And I was fuming, just waiting till we got back to her house. I wanted to confront her but felt it was not the right time. We reached her house and she got down from the car smiling. No remorse or regret on her face. It does not end here. She had the audacity to ask me about that incident. She thought I might admire her for that maneuver. I was not going to hold back anymore. I did let her know that she was nothing more than a vengeful bitch who deserves to rot in hell. I am not a racist, but I did make comments on her look. And I was harsh. And I have no regret in body shaming her. She broke down into tears and went in. I called up my driver to come and pick me up. We have crossed paths many times since then, as we have a lot of mutual friends. It has almost been 5 years since that incident and we have had no conversations. I still hate her and I am sure she dislikes me as well. But there is someone out there who hates both of us even more. I am sure that little girl and her family would have still not forgotten about that evening when a few spoiled rich girls ruined their evening. When did you realize you had a guardian angel? Many years ago, before there were cell phones, we had these things called pagers strapped to our hips. Someone would page you with their phone number and you would call them back when you got to a phone. As an on-call technician working in the audio-visual field, my pager would go off all the freaking time. Like most people who used pagers, our clients knew that if you followed up your number with a 911, that would indicate to the technician to stop what they were doing and call right away. Although I was always busy, I rarely if ever got 911s. One afternoon traveling from Orlando to St. Petersburg via Interstate 4, my pager goes off with a number I don't recognize, followed by the 911. I find the first exit, and pull into a little truck stop looking place outside of Plant City, to use the payphone. This takes maybe 3 minutes tops. I walk in, ask for some change and head to the wall where there are 4 payphones to choose from. I pop my quarter in and dial the number displayed on my trusty pager. It rings and rings and rings and rings. I'm thinking to myself, what the fuck? Who would page me with a 911 and not answer their phone? It's just about then that I notice another ringing sound in addition to the one in my ear. I pull the handset from my ear and 2 phones over on the wall another payphone is ringing, but with an incoming call. I hang up my handset and the ringing stops on the other phone. I walk a few paces over, pick up the handset and look at the phone number printed above the buttons. I look at the number on my pager. I look at the number on the phone. I look at the number on my pager again. I look at the phone again. Except for the 911, they are identical. I lose my breath for a second and then I make my way over to the girl at the counter and ask if she saw anyone use the pay phone. She said I was the only person in the store in the last hour. The whole episode probably took 15 minutes, but man, I was freaked out. The hair on the back of my neck was standing straight up and I just wanted out of there. I get about 10 miles down the highway and come upon a scene that looked like a bomb went off. A 4-car pileup involving a tractor trailer hauling a load of steel that had come loose, state troopers and paramedics just arriving. I pulled over to the side and helped the best I could, but it was all pretty much over once it began. I have no idea why I got that page or from whom or what, but I'm convinced that if I hadn't, I would not be alive to write this today. What regret will you have to live with for the rest of your life? The fact that I killed an elderly man in front of his wife and basically his entire family. One night when I was in college I was driving to get some liquor for a party my fraternity was supposed to throw the following night. I was taking a street I was very familiar with to get back to my house. It was dark but the street was lit with street lamps. I remember that I looked at my radio for a second, just a second, not very long at all. But when I looked back up to the road there was a man crossing. I didn't have any time to react. By the time I saw him he had already hit the good side of my car and bounced off the side. I remember screaming and hitting the brakes, and the wash of horror of what had just happened. I'll admit I had thought about speeding away, but I pulled over to the side and ran out of my car to check on this guy. It was a horror scene. When I got to him his family was standing outside the restaurant he was leaving and they were all screaming and crying. He was lying on the side of the road with blood coming out his nose and mouth. His body was all disjointed and somewhat looked like a rag doll. That is when I knew I had messed up. Not only did I run into this man, but I also killed him as well. 2 other men were standing with him trying to see if he was alright and calling 911. All I could say was I didn't see him. I was frantic by the time it had said and what I had done. I sat on the curb across from the family and listened to their crying in agony while we waited for the paramedics to arrive. I sat there and sobbed while paramedics took him away in an ambulance. I had no clue what would happen to me. Would I be in jail for the rest of my life? I don't believe I've ever cried so hard and for so long. The worst part about all of it and what still kills me today was that his wife came over to me while I was distraught on that curb, sat next to me, placed her hand on my shoulder and said I was married to him for almost 50 years. We had a good life. Then she hugged me and said that she forgave me. After everything was said and done it was ruled that it was an accident. I wasn't charged with anything and I had one of my friends pick me up from the police station. I went down a dark path the years after that. I drank heavily, smoked a lot of za, dropped out of college in my senior year, and had to move back in with my mother and father because I couldn't hold on to a job. My high school sweetheart broke up with me because of my changed attitude. At one point, I didn't even feel like living in the depressed hole that I was in, and I tried to unalive myself with pills. I felt like I was spiraling down and had nobody to hold on to. It was a hard road to recovery, but eventually I got my life back in order. Joined up with the Navy and saw a bit of the world, and now I'm on track to go back to college and hopefully finish what I started there. It took almost a decade, but I finally started to feel almost whole again. I'm back to hanging with my friends, and actually going out. I am also in talks again with my ex, so maybe there is a light at the end of the tunnel.